Yo, what's going on, snipers, and welcome to our Stanley Cup Finals Rematch series. And today we're going to be doing a highly requested Stanley Cup Finals, and that is the Vancouver Canucks and the New York Rangers from 1994. Now, I kind of teased about this on my Twitter account like months ago. I just have not gotten around to actually doing it because of the fact like school's been really busy and whatnot. So I've been just doing literally franchise mode for like the last 2 months. So I apologize about that. But let's get to this next Stanley Cup Finals rematch. So, a little bit about this series, if you guys were not familiar with it or if you were not alive at the point in time. Vancouver was the 7th seed in the West, and they went on to surprise a lot of people as they knocked out the Calgary Flames in the first round, the Dallas Stars in the second round, and Toronto in the conference finals, because I think, yeah, Toronto was like on the Western Conference back in those days. I don't even know why, but it was really weird how the NHL was laid out at that point in time. Unfortunately for them, they would come one game short of winning the Stanley Cup as they would lose to the New York Rangers in a hard-fought 7 games. As for the New York Rangers, they were the top seed in the East, and they swept their rivals in the Islanders in the first round, followed it up with a 5-game winning series over the Caps, and then they won in 7 games over New Jersey. That's when I think Stephane Matteau had his game-winning goal that sent them to the finals. After 4 games in the finals, though, the Rangers did actually have a 3-1 series lead. However, they would lose the next 2, and then it went on to Game 7. However, Game 7 only came down to 1 goal because of Mark Messier, and that's the reason the Rangers won the Stanley Cup, or else Vancouver could have probably came back from a 3-1 deficit to win their first Stanley Cup, which they're still searching for to this day. So now that you guys got a little history lesson, I guess you could say, about what the 1994 Stanley Cup was like, let's get into the jerseys for both teams, starting off with the Vancouver Canucks. So here's the home jersey for the 1994 Vancouver Canucks. As you can see, it's got the nice flying skate logo with the nice colors. You got the yellow, the orangey red, I think, and then like the black. I used to really hate these jerseys. I don't know why, but now I really like them. Like, I just find the color scheme is so vintage and so nice looking that it's a really cool jersey. And then the away jersey is the black version, which looks really nice actually. It almost gives a German, like a Germany jersey look to it, and yeah, I just really like it for some reason. Like, I know a lot of people like still probably hate it, but nowadays I find it's just kind of a good way to reminisce the past. And so, I'm originally actually from like British Columbia, so I used to kind of like the Canucks to an extent when I was younger, even though I lived in Ottawa, but still kind of cool. So yeah, that's Vancouver. Let's flip on over to the jerseys for the New York Rangers. Oh yeah, first before we go to the New York Rangers, I want to mention something that's kind of cool. I actually did try and customize the goal horn for the not the New York Rangers, the Vancouver Canucks in this, because their goal horn is kind of hard to replicate. So I'll see if I could play it back so you guys could see what it sounds like. I tried to remake it so it sounds like exactly like the one. So just in create. Oh yeah, I could preview it, so I'll let you guys listen to this. So let me just turn up my game audio. So I don't know if that sounded like the Canucks goal horn from 1994, but if it did, let me know, guys, because I tried to make it as good as possible. I just wanted it to sound somewhat authentic. The New York Rangers one, I also had to make a custom one, but it's nowhere near as accurate as the one that's actually the Rangers goal horn. Because in this, for some reason, New York, their team just does not want their goal horn used anywhere else in their logo, like their one with like the Ranger across it. So like the jerseys and all that stuff don't look 100% accurate. It's just kind of annoying. So let's get to the team uniform for the Rangers. So here is their home jersey. For the most part, it is accurate, except for the fact that there's the Ranger logo like that on it. Like I said, it would just be normally like the Rangers across thing like they have had for like quite a few years. And then their away jersey is this blue jersey, which it also would be like today's NHL, except for it's like reversed between the two. And they did not have an alternate, obviously, back in these days. I think 1998 is when they brought in that Statue of Liberty jersey, so they didn't have that at this point in time. Okay guys, so now on to the lineups for both teams, starting off with the Vancouver Canucks. So starting off here on the left side, we got Jeff COURTNALL, and Jeff also had a younger brother who played in the NHL. That was Russ, and Russ played with the Dallas Stars at this point in time. But Jeff was actually a solid all-around player. He had 367 goals, 432 assists for 799 points in 1,048 games. He also had 1,465 penalty minutes, so he was pretty physical, and he was good in his own end as he was a career plus 118. He won only one Stanley Cup in his career, and that was with the 1988 Edmonton Oilers. Then moving on to the center, we got the dad that made it out of camp first, and that is Cliff Ronning. Yeah, so Cliff is Ty's father, if you guys did not know that for some reason. Cliff wasn't the biggest guy, coming in at only 5'8", 170 pounds. However, he did lace up 1,137 career games. He scored 306 goals and got 563 assists for 869 points. He had also 453 penalty minutes and was a career plus 46. And he also played with 7 teams over his career, but he never won a Stanley Cup. Now on the right side, we have the Russian rocket Pavel Bure, who is only 22 years old at this point in time. Bure was a dominant player in this postseason for the Canucks, posting up 16 goals, 15 assists for 31 points in 24 games. During the regular seasons as well, he was a very huge threat, scoring 60 goals, and he had 107 points. Bure's career was cut short due to injuries as he retired in the 2002-03 season with the Rangers. He was also a 3-time All-Star, won the Calder in 1991-92, and had 2 Maurice Richards as the top scorer in the league. He's now an NHL Hall of Famer. You guys probably know him anyways, so I shouldn't have went into detail, but yeah, Pavel Bure, this guy's a legend. Now on the second line left wing here, we have Greg Adams, who actually went to a pantry that my mom used to work at in British Columbia way back before we even both started liking hockey, so it's kind of cool that he went there. But yeah, Greg Adams was actually a pretty underrated forward for the most part. He played just over 1,000 games, scoring 355 goals and also getting 388 assists for 743 points. He had only 321 penalty minutes and was a career minus 48. Over his career, he played with New Jersey, Vancouver, Dallas, Phoenix, and Florida before he left for Germany for 1 season, and then he would retire at the end of the 2002-03 season, with his last NHL season being in 2001. At center, we have Murray Craven, who was another underrated forward, in my opinion. He laced up 1,071 games, scoring 266 goals, getting 493 assists for 759 points. He was also a career plus 125 and had 524 penalty minutes. He played also with Detroit, Philadelphia, Hartford, Vancouver here, and in Chicago and San Jose before he retired in the 99-2000 campaign. He also never won a Stanley Cup. On the right side here, we got Trevor Linden, who most of you should know. Trevor was drafted 2nd overall in 1988 behind Mike Modano, just in case you didn't know that. He played 1,382 games in his career, scoring 375 goals, 492 assists for 867 points. He also had 895 penalty minutes and was a career minus 64. He was mainly on Vancouver because he was in them with Vancouver for 2 different stints, but he was also with the Islanders at one point, the Habs, and the Capitals. On the third line left wing here, we have SERGIO MOMESSO, and SERGIO MOMESSO was more of a physical player. However, he did have a solid amount of points by the end of his career as he played 710 games, and he had 345 career points over that span. He also had 1,557 penalty minutes and was a +9. SERGIO also played for Montreal, St. Louis, Vancouver, Toronto, and the Rangers in 13 years. At center here, we have Nathan Lafayette, who was a NHLer who played a really short stint in the NHL. He only played 187 career games. Over that span, he played with 4 teams from St. Louis to Vancouver to the Rangers to the Kings. He retired at the age of 26 because he was believed to have suffered 2 concussions in the same game with the Los Angeles Kings, so he only had 37 career points over that span in 103 penalty minutes, but yeah, the guy had 2 concussions potentially in 1 game, and yeah, he retired young. On the right side here, we have Martin Gelina, who was also in our 2004 Stanley Cup Finals rematch, if you guys remember way back in NHL 18, if you've been following since then. Anyways, Marty made the Stanley Cup Finals 4 times over his career and only won once, which was the first time he won in 1990 when he was a rookie with the Oilers. He did lose here in 1994 with the Canucks, and then he also lost in 2002 with the Hurricanes and 2004 with the Flames. He was actually claimed off the waivers by the Canucks this season from Quebec. He had 660 points as well as 820 penalty minutes in 1,273 games. On the fourth line here, we have SHAWN ANTOSKI, who was an enforcer for the most part. ANTOSKI, like Lafayette, had a short career that lasted only 183 games. Over his 183 career games, SHAWN only had 8 career points in 599 penalty minutes. His last season would come in the 1997-98 season with the Mighty Ducks. In November of 1997, he was actually involved in a serious car accident. He would recover but only play 9 more NHL games. He played with Vancouver, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Anaheim over his career. At center here, we have John McIntyre, who laced up 351 career games. John had only 78 points and was a career minus 32. He also had 516 penalty minutes, and he played with 4 teams, that being Toronto, Los Angeles, the Rangers, and the Canucks. He too stopped playing at 26 years of age, so 3 guys on this team already who retired young. So yeah, that's kind of a bad thing, I guess, for them. On the right side here, we have Tim Hunter, who is one of the 3 Hunter brothers. Tim was part of the 1989 Calgary Flames, who went on to win the Stanley Cup, but that would be the only one he won in his career. Tim wasn't as physical as his brother Dale. However, through 815 career games, he had 138 points, but he had 3,146 penalty minutes, so he was still very physical. That puts him 8th all time in terms of penalty minutes. His brother, I think, is number 2 or number 1. Tim also played with the Flames, the Nordiques, and the Sharks before he retired. Now into the depth forwards, we have Jose CARBONNEAU, who only played 71 career games between Montreal and Vancouver. Over that time, CARBONNEAU had 22 points in 67 penalty minutes. And he was actually drafted 12th overall by Montreal in 1985, which was even before Joe Nieuwendyk. So this guy was a major bust in comparison to Joe Nieuwendyk, obviously. So yeah, Jose CARBONNEAU. Our next step forward is Jimmy Carson, who was also another really underrated player in my opinion. Jimmy played 626 career games with 275 goals, 286 assists for 561 points. He was a career minus 20 and had 254 penalty minutes. He was also drafted 2nd overall by the Los Angeles Kings back in 1986. He played for the Edmonton Oilers as well, Detroit Red Wings, and the Hartford Whalers. And now our final depth forward is Gino Odjick, who was another very physical player. He played only 605 career games with 137 points. However, he racked up 2,567 penalty minutes. His last season came in 2001-02 with the Montreal Canadiens, and he also played with the Islanders and the Flyers. Okay, so now moving on to the defensive core. I didn't actually write down a script for the defense and for the entire New York Rangers, so forgive me if any of this information is wrong. But first up, we have Jyrki Lumme, who was a Finnish defenseman. He also played with Phoenix. I don't think he ever won a Stanley Cup in his career, but he was a pretty serviceable defenseman for many years, kind of underrated as well. And then we got Jeff Brown, who is the father of Logan Brown. He actually was a very good, offensive-minded defenseman because he had 584 career points in 747 games, 430 assists, and 154 career goals. He also played with the Quebec Nordiques, the St. Louis Blues, the Hartford Whalers, and then also into Carolina when they moved over. And then he also played Toronto and Washington before retiring. Then on the second pairing, we have Dave Babbage, who I think also was a more underrated kind of defenseman. Babbage had 723 career points in 1,195 games. It was a minus 216, so this guy was pretty much more offensively minded for a defender. However, he did also have 970 penalty minutes, so he was physical when he needed to be. It's kind of weird that this guy was more offensively minded when he was a big guy at 6'2", 215. So yeah, that's Dave Babbage. Next up, we had GERALD DIDUCK, who was also kind of an underrated defenseman, but he was more defensively minded. He had 212 points in 932 games respectively. However, he did also have a career plus 88, so he was good in his own end. And he had 1,612 penalty minutes, so he was also pretty physical. He played with the Islanders, the Montreal Canadiens, the Chicago Blackhawks, the Hartford Whalers, the Phoenix Coyotes, the Toronto Maple Leafs, and the Dallas Stars. So he moved around quite a bit. Then on the top 6 pairing here, we have BRET, who was also in our 2006 Stanley Cup Finals Rematch episode from way back in NHL 18, early on. So yeah, he won the Stanley Cup with Carolina that season. He also played for the St. Louis Blues, the Florida Panthers, because I think he was part of that Pavel Bure trade, and he also played for Carolina, as I was saying, and Anaheim before retiring in 2009. Over his career, he had 294 points in 1,039 career games. He was also a minus 23 and had 893 penalty minutes. I do believe now he's like some sort of like commentator, like analyst or something, but I could be wrong with that. But yeah, that's BRET HEDICAN. Next up, we have Brian Glynn, who was actually with the 1991 Minnesota North Stars that went to the Stanley Cup Finals. Unfortunately, they lost, so he never won a Stanley Cup. However, what's kind of cool about Brian Glynn is he's actually from Germany, and he played for quite a few teams over his career, including Calgary, the North Stars, as I was just saying, the Edmonton Oilers, the Ottawa Senators for a tiny bit, which I didn't even know, being a Sens fan, so that's kind of cool. And then he also played with Hartford after his time in Vancouver. So some of the seasons that Brian had was pretty good. Like, he had a couple, like, 20-point seasons. However, like, he kind of trailed off, it seems like, near the end of his career, because he was putting up, like, in his first season, 19 points in 67 games. But then eventually by, like, one of his last years, which was when he was 28 years old, he had only 4 assists in 54 games. So he kind of dropped off quite a bit later. By the end of his career, he had 104 points in 431 games. Now moving on to the depth defenders, here we got Dana Merzen, and Dana Merzen was a physical defenseman. He had 204 career points in 838 games and was a career plus 136. However, he had 1,571 penalty minutes, so basically like he's averaging around 2 penalty minutes a game or so. He also played with the Hartford Whalers back in 1985. And he also played with the Calgary Flames, where he won a Stanley Cup in 1989, and then he would finish his career at the Vancouver Canucks in 1999. And the final skater we have is Jiri Slegr, and Jiri Slegr actually was doing really good this season with the Vancouver Canucks. However, he did suffer an injury, I think, which caused him to only play like in one playoff game. During the regular season in 1993-94, he had 38 points in 78 games. But then, like I was saying, in the playoffs, I think he only played a couple games. I'm literally looking up right now as I'm speaking. Yeah, he didn't play a single game in this playoff run, so he must have got like a really bad injury, like a concussion or something. So he was out the entire playoff run for the Canucks, which was not good because he was one of their best defensemen. However, in Jiri Slegr's career, he won the Stanley Cup as a member of the 2002 Detroit Red Wings. He also played with the Edmonton Oilers, the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Atlanta Thrashers, the Vancouver Canucks, again for a different exchange in 03-04, and then also the Boston Bruins. During that span, he was also pretty good offensively. He had 249 points in 622 games, and he was a career plus 32 with 838 penalty minutes. Okay, so let's get on to the goaltending matchup now for the Vancouver Canucks, starting off with their starter, Kirk McLean. So Kirk McLean was kind of an underrated goalie, but he was also kind of an overrated goalie. Like, he had some good seasons, he kind of had some bad seasons. Over his career, he played 612 games, going 245, 262, and 72, with only 22 shutouts and a 3.26 goals against average. He actually made the All-Star team once in his career. I think that was, I'm not sure what year that was. I think it was maybe, yeah, it was when he played for Vancouver. It was in 1992. But he also played with New Jersey, Carolina, Florida, and then finished his career off with the New York Rangers. During this playoff run, though, Kirk was actually really, really good. He played 24 games, obviously, because Vancouver went so far. He went 15-9 with a .928 save percentage and a 2.29 goals against average. He also had 4 shutouts, so he was a better playoff goalie, I think, than in his regular season career. So yeah, he could have been just a better clutch goalie. Then we got Kay Whitmore, who was kind of a goalie that I don't really know much about, because I looked up like pictures of him and it's really hard to find any pictures of his actual face. So, but yeah, Kay Whitmore played with the Hartford Whalers in his career before he went to Vancouver. He also didn't play with Boston and Calgary for some short stints, but he only played 155 career games, going 60-64 with 16 ties. He also had 4 shutouts, a high 3.55 goals against average, and an .875 save percentage. He never got to play a single playoff game this postseason because Kirk McLean was doing so good. So yeah, Kay Whitmore was just there to sit on the bench and keep it warm. So that is the Vancouver Canucks. Now let's move on to the lineup for the Stanley Cup winning New York Rangers. Okay guys, so here is the lineup for the Stanley Cup winning New York Rangers. Starting off here on the left side, we got Adam Graves, who was a pretty highly underrated sniper in my opinion. He would score a lot of goals, but he would also be a good team player. I think he was also kind of physical. Yeah, he was physical. I'm just looking at his stats right now. He played 1,152 career games, putting up 616 points. 329 of those were goals, and had 1,224 penalty minutes. He was a two-time Stanley Cup champion, and then he also made the All-Star team once. He won the Clancy, and he won the Masterton at one point in time. Now at center here we have Mark Messier, who all you guys should know. He said that his team was going to come through with some wins to win a series. I think it was the New Jersey series to get to the Stanley Cup Finals, and he did just that, so he was a good captain. Vancouver fans obviously don't like him because of the fact that he was like, he scored a goal against them to win the Stanley Cup pretty much in Game 7, and then he was with the Canucks for like I think only like 2 seasons or 3 seasons. But yeah, obviously you guys know how good Mark Messier was. He was a great two-way player. He won a lot of Stanley Cups over his career. This was his first without Wayne Gretzky by his side, because he won a total of 6 Stanley Cups, 5-time All-Star as well. He won 2 Harts, 2 Pearsons, and then also the 83-84 Conn Smythe Trophy when the Edmonton Oilers won the Cup. And then he was also a Hall of Famer, which you guys should know. On the right side here, we have a young Alexei Kovalev, or Alex Kovalev, whatever you want to call him. Kovalev was only 20 years old at this point in time, but he was a very underrated player when he was young. And he still is kind of an underrated player to this day, as he had 1,029 points in 1,316 games. But I didn't realize how physical of a player he was. He had 1,304 penalty minutes as well, so the guy was almost getting a penalty a game, and then he was also putting up a lot of points. So this guy was a very good, like, power forward sniper kind of combination. Then on the left wing here, we got Stefan Matteau, who is the father of the other Stefan Matteau. It's spelled differently. It's spelled with like an F. So this Matteau only won 1 Stanley Cup, which was the season in 1994. However, he did play with the Calgary Flames, the Chicago Blackhawks, the St. Louis Blues, the San Jose Sharks, and then the Florida Panthers before he would retire in 2002-03. He was kind of more of a physical player. He had 742 penalty minutes in 848 games. However, he did have some points, 316 to be exact. And he had some clutch goals in the playoffs. Like, you guys probably have seen the Matteau goal before. I don't know where I've seen it, but I know I've seen it before. Then at center here, we got Esa Tikkanen, who won 5 Stanley Cups over his career, including 4, I think, with the Edmonton Oilers, and then the one here with the New York Rangers. So he was another one of those players that played with the Edmonton Oilers that came over to New York. He also played with the St. Louis Blues, the New Jersey Devils, the Florida Panthers, the Washington Capitals, and actually the Vancouver Canucks as well. So yeah, it seems like a lot of these players are playing for both teams, like the Canucks and the Rangers, so it's kind of neat. Tikkanen actually was also a very physical player. He had 1,077 penalty minutes in 877 games, but he did have 630 points as well, so he was kind of a grinder kind of guy, I guess you could say, because he's not the biggest dude at 6'1", 190. Then we got Steve Larmer, who's another really underrated forward. Like, nobody really looks at him in NHL history. Like, he's not even in the Hall of Fame yet. But this guy had 1,012 points in 1,006 games, 441 goals, 571 assists, and he was also career plus 203 and had 532 penalty minutes. He actually won the Calder in 1983 as a member of the Chicago Blackhawks. And he also had a brother named Jeff Larmer who played in the NHL for a bit, was not as successful as he was, but still pretty good nonetheless. This was his only Stanley Cup win, and it was in, I think it was like his final year almost in the NHL. Yeah, he played one more season after this, so he kind of retired a bit early, like at 33, but he still at least won that 1 Stanley Cup. Then on the third line here, we got Sergei Nemchinov, who was one of those like many Russians that were coming over to the NHL. He played 761 career games, putting up 345 points. He won 2 Stanley Cups in his career, including one with the Rangers and then one with the Devils in 2000 and I think it's 2001 that he won it with them. Nemchinov also didn't take a whole lot of penalty minutes because, like I said, over 761 games, he only put up 251 penalty minutes. So this guy was taking like one every like third game or so. So yeah, he wasn't just the type of guy to get in the box that often. Then on center here we have Brian Noonan, who was kind of a physical forward, but he also could put up points. He had 275 points in 629 games, as well as 518 penalty minutes. This was his only Stanley Cup win, but he did play for a lot of other teams, including Chicago, St. Louis. He came back to the Rangers in '96 after being away from them for only like a season. Then he also played with the Vancouver Canucks for a few years, the Phoenix Coyotes, where he would retire in 1999. Then we got another Edmonton Oiler that used to play with them for multiple Stanley Cups, and that is Glenn Anderson. You guys should know Glenn Anderson if you're an Oilers fan or a Rangers fan, but Glenn Anderson won 6 Stanley Cups just like Messier did. Glenn also actually played, technically he didn't play for the Canucks, but I think he was actually traded to the Canucks, but the same day he was traded to, I think it was the Rangers in this, or it was St. Louis or something. But yeah, he basically also could have been technically a Canuck. So Glenn was actually from BC, so he was beating his hometown team. So the Cup still technically went to Vancouver, but just not in the same fashion as it did for New York. Glenn had 498 goals, 601 assists for 1,099 points in 1,129 games. He was also in our last Stanley Cup Finals rematch. Same goes for, I think, Tikkanen and Messier. Maybe not Tikkanen, but definitely Anderson and Messier. Then on the fourth line here we have Greg Gilbert, who was also actually in our last Stanley Cup Finals rematch, if you guys remember, with the New York Islanders. So he played with both Islanders, or not both Islanders, both New York teams, or New York-based teams, except for Buffalo. He had 378 points in 837 career games. He was also a career plus 107 and had 576 penalty minutes. He won a total of 3 Stanley Cups in his career, 1 here with the Rangers and then 2 with the Islanders. Then we got Craig McTavish, who was also a head coach of the Edmonton Oilers at one point in time. He had 480 points in 1,093 games and 891 penalty minutes, so he was definitely a bit more of a physical player nonetheless. He won a couple Stanley Cups with the Oilers and then here with the New York Rangers. He also would play with the Boston Bruins and the Philadelphia Flyers and the St. Louis Blues in his career before retiring in 1997. On the right side here, we got Joey Kocur, who also won, I think, let me just check to make sure. He won also some Stanley Cups, I think, with the Detroit Red Wings. Yeah, he won 3 Stanley Cups over his career, even though he only played 820 games. I believe both the ones prior to this were with with Detroit, because he played with Detroit before he played with the Rangers, and then he came back to Detroit after he played with the Rangers, I think, or after he played with the Canucks for a season. So yeah, Joe Kocur was more of a physical guy. I think he's up there in like all-time penalty minutes. He had 2,519 penalty minutes in 820 games, but also had 162 points, which is pretty respectable for a enforcer kind of guy like him. Now we get into the depth forwards, and the first one here is Nick Kypreos. If you guys don't watch Sportsnet, then you wouldn't know this guy, but Nick Kypreos is currently an analyst on Sportsnet, kind of one of the most annoying ones, kind of in a way. But yeah, Nick Kypreos, he only had a really short career. He only played 442 games, and he had 90 points, but he was kind of also an enforcer because he had 1,210 penalty minutes over that span. He also did play with the Washington Capitals, the Hartford Whalers, and the Toronto Maple Leafs, which was his hometown team, before he retired. And then our final depth forward here is Ed Olczyk. You guys should know Eddie Olczyk because he's obviously the guy that's right beside Doc Emmerich all the time for these broadcast games. But anyways, Ed Olczyk had 794 points over 1,031 games. The only reason he scratched here is because I think he missed most of the playoffs as well with an injury. Because during the regular season he was playing pretty good, but I think he missed a lot of the season, so that's kind of what screwed him up. This was his only Stanley Cup win, but he did also play with a lot of other teams, including Chicago, Toronto, LA, and Pittsburgh. He was also actually a head coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins, I think, for a couple seasons, so that's also pretty cool, like when they were kind of getting ready to make the playoffs, like before 2007. So yeah, he was coach, I believe, for like when Marc-Andre Fleury was a rookie and stuff like that. So yeah, that's Eddie Olczyk. Then moving on to this really nice defensive core for the New York Rangers, we got Brian Leetch, who had a dynamite career, one of the best defensemen of all time, and he actually won the Conn Smythe this year, I believe. Yeah, he won the Conn Smythe this year, as he had, like, I think over 30 points in this playoffs. Yeah, in 1993-94, he had 34 points in 23 games. He was an amazing defenseman. And then also in his regular season career, he had 1,028 points in 1,205 games. 247 of them were goals, 781 were assists. He was only a plus 25, so he wasn't the greatest on his defensive end, but he did play with some bad teams, including Toronto and Boston. Over his career, he also was a 5-time All-Star. He had 2 Norris trophies. He could have probably won a lot more. Like I said, the Conn Smythe he won. He won the Rookie of the Year in 1989. He won the Stanley Cup this season, and he's currently an NHL Hall of Famer. Now, his defensive partner, a lot of you guys might not know, but Sergei Zubov actually played for this 1994 New York Rangers team. He was also in our 1999 Stanley Cup Finals rematch, if you guys remember that way back when I started these rematches in NHL 18. Sergei Zubov won 2 Stanley Cups over his career, and in my opinion, he's kind of one of the most overlooked defensemen, because he had a lot of points and he was really good in some seasons, but like just nobody really talks about him because he was only a one-time All-Star. However, like looking at his points, this playoff run he had 19 points in 22 games. You could say it was because he was playing with Brian Leetch, but guess what his regular season numbers were? This was only his second year in the NHL, and this guy had 89 points in 78 games. I know 77 of them were assists, but still, this guy was like an insane defenseman. Like his lowest point totals in his career in a season was his rookie season, where he had 31 points in 49 games. Because 2008-09, when he was already 38 by then, and he was retiring, he had 4 assists in 10 games, but that's not a full season. The rest of the seasons, the dude played up a lot of points. As being so, he had 771 career points over 1,068 games. Majority of them were assists, but this guy was just really underrated, in my opinion. Now in the top 4 here, we got Alexander Karpovtsev, who was one of those Russian players that tragically died on that September 2011 plane crash. That I remember that day when I heard about that. It was really sad about all those guys that died on that. Karpovtsev was pretty good defenseman. He had one really good season with the Toronto Maple Leafs, but other than that, he was kind of more of a at-home defenseman. Like he had 188 points in 596 games, but he was just more like it's because of his size. I think he was more of a physical like defenseman nonetheless. And then we got his partner, which is Jeff Bookeboom. Jeff Bookeboom was just known for his really solid defensive play, and then also for his big hits. That like I don't know what his nickname was, but I think it was like something like Boomer or something like that. But yeah, he was just a very physical defenseman. Had almost 2,000 penalty minutes in 804 games. And what's kind of cool is actually he's the cousin of Joe Nieuwendyk, and then he's also the uncle, he's the cousin of Joe Nieuwendyk, and his uncle is another player named Ed Kia. I don't really know much about Ed Kia. According to this, he played 583 career games, and he was from the Netherlands, so that's kind of neat. So yeah, Jeff Bookeboom is related to Joe Nieuwendyk, if you did not know that. Next up, we have Kevin Lowe, who won a lot of other Stanley Cups as well with the Oilers. Like you guys should know, he was, I think, in our last rematch nonetheless. Kevin Lowe also was the general manager, I think, for the Oilers for a couple seasons at least, and then he was eventually fired. But yeah, Kevin Lowe was also a pretty good, solid defensive defenseman, but he could also contribute like some good passes nonetheless. Then we got Doug Lidster, who is also kind of underrated. He had 343 career points in 897 games, as well as 679 penalty minutes. He won 2 Stanley Cups over his career, once with the Rangers, obviously here, and then also in 99 with the Dallas Stars and Sergei Zubov. He also played with the Blues, the Canucks the seasons before this, so he actually was with the Canucks team as well, and then the Dallas Stars, as I was just saying. And he's also a British Columbia boy too, so he also won against probably his team that he grew up watching. And then we get onto the depth defenseman, the only depth defenseman, and that is veteran Jay Wells, who I think was in the last year of his career. No, he was not, okay. But yeah, Jay Wells had a pretty long career, starting it off in the 79-80 season with the Los Angeles Kings, and he retired in 96-97 with Tampa Bay. He was a very physical defenseman, putting up 2,359 penalty minutes in 1,098 games, as well as 263 points over that span. And yeah, it's just kind of crazy that he played with the Los Angeles Kings that wore those purple jerseys way back, so he's kind of a veteran of the NHL. And this was his only Stanley Cup wins, so he didn't win any at all before then because he was with the Flyers as well when they did not win the Stanley Cup. He was also with Buffalo, who never won a Stanley Cup, and in St. Louis and Tampa Bay, like I was saying. Now on to the goaltenders for the New York Rangers, starting it off with their best goaltender, probably of all time other than Henrik Lundqvist. Well, actually, yeah, Lundqvist is probably better than Mike Richter, but Mike Richter, close second, I would say. Richter played 666 career games with 301 wins, 258 losses, and 73 ties. He also had 24 shutouts, a 904 save percentage, and a 2.89 goals against average. This was his only Stanley Cup win, and he only played for the New York Rangers in his career. He played with them from 1989-90 when he was 23 years old, all the way till 2002-03 when he was 36. So it's kind of cool that this guy spent his entire career as the Rangers, because for goaltenders, it's kind of hard for them to stay around that long with one team, but this guy did. Over his playoffs in 1993-94, he went 16-7 in 23 games with a 921 save percentage and a 2.07 goals against average with 4 shutouts. So I think he probably would have been one of those guys to take home the Conn Smythe if Brian Leetch did not. Then his backup here, we got Glenn Healy, who kind of was a little bit of an interesting goalie. He went 166, 190, and 47. But he had a 3.37 goals against average and an 887 save percentage, so he wasn't the greatest. I think it could be due to lack of size though. 5'9", 190. He was probably one of the shortest goalies in the NHL. I think he was actually recently kind of like a Hockey Night in Canada kind of analyst, but I don't know if he still is. I could be wrong with that. But yeah, he also played with the Los Angeles Kings, the New York Islanders, and the Toronto Maple Leafs before he retired in 2001. Okay guys, so that is the New York Rangers for the 1994 Stanley Cup Finals rematch. Now let's get into this rematch. I actually still have to set it up because I did not set it up yet. So just give me a second with this. But yeah, this Stanley Cup Finals rematch should be pretty interesting. Like I said, these two teams are kind of close in how they matched up. Canucks were kind of a team that just squeaked into the postseason, while the Rangers, they were kind of just a team that were dynamite throughout the entire year. Because they were first, like I said, in the Eastern Conference, and they went on to win. So okay guys, so here we go, the Vancouver Canucks from 1994 and the New York Rangers. This should be interesting. So we're going to just do real-time simulation for the first 3 games or 4 games, and then when a team has a chance to win a Stanley Cup, we're going to intervene and I'll let you guys watch the Stanley Cup celebration. And yeah, that will be pretty much it for this video. And then next video, so you guys know, is going to be probably the 2003 Stanley Cup Finals. We're probably going to do New Jersey and Anaheim, or we might do the 97 finals between the Flyers and the Detroit Red Wings. So it's either one of those two that are next. Also, I want to quickly let you guys know that 1993-94 is going to be my next full-on roster build for NHL 20. So if you guys are with this channel when I'm making NHL 20 content, make sure you watch those type of things, because those are going to be really interesting. I know NHL 20 is still 5 months away, but still nonetheless. So let's get into this and see what happens here. Game number 1 in New York at the Madison Square Garden. Let's see what happens here. First period, and it is 1-1. So Greg Adams opening the scoring for the Canucks, and then Esa Tikkanen will tie it up. Shots are in the favor for the Canucks, 14-10. Second period, still 1-1. So this is a good goaltending matchup. Shots are even, and then the score is even. Maybe this is a series that goes all 7 games like in real life. And Brian Noonan scores to give the Rangers the lead. It's not good for the Canucks. Come on, Canucks. I want the Canucks to win out of this just because of the fact, being a Canadian person, I just would rather the Canucks to win. And Glenn Anderson gives the Rangers a 3-1 lead. And besides, I want history to be kind of rewritten in a sense. And there's an empty netter from Brian Noonan, who has 2 goals in that game, and the Rangers take game 1 4-1. So goals: Adams from Linden and Ryan, Tikkanen from Mateau and Karpatsev, Noonan from Nemchinov and Anderson, and an Anderson from McTavish and Lowe, while Noonan scored the empty netter from Anderson and Nemchinov. So it looks like that third line got it done for the Rangers this time. 3 stars: Anderson, Noonan, and Richter. Okay, so that was a pretty interesting first game. Hopefully the Canucks could rebound from that, because New York is a really tough team to play against, and yeah, they showed it right there in the first game. First period of game number 2, and 3-0 Canucks. That's what I want to see. Pavel Bure gets on the board. You don't want to let him to get going, New York. And then John McIntyre scores, and Murray Craven makes it 3-0. Shots are 14-6 for the Canucks after 1 second period, and it's 4-0 Canucks. Murray Craven with his second of the night. And it looks like the Canucks are going to tie the series, headed back to Vancouver. I don't even remember what the Canucks arena is called now. But yeah, we'd be heading back there. I think it's a Coliseum of some sort, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, this is definitely the type of game the Canucks wanted. Outshooting them heavily and have a 4-0 lead. And a great game between the pipes from Kirk McLean. So Pavel Bure from Jeff Brown and Cliff Ronning. McIntyre from Hunter and HEDICAN. Craven from Linden and Adams. And Craven from Linden and Adams again. 3 stars. Glenn Healy gets first star. Wow. So Richter was pulled out early, and Healy was just good for the rest of the game. He gets first star. Kirk McLean the second star, and Murray Craven the third. Okay, so tie series headed into Vancouver. This one, I think it probably could go all 7 games like in real life. I just hope the Canucks win this time around. No offense to your Rangers fans. So here we go, game number 3 in Vancouver, first period, and it's 1-0 Canucks. Nathan Lafayette scores. Shots are 12-10, so it's a pretty tight game still. Second period, still 1-0 Canucks. Shots are tight still, 22-20. This is anybody's game here in the third. The Canucks just need to get some insurance if they want to win this game, because they are playing pretty good for the most part. Rangers looking to solve Kirk McLean, who has not let in a single goal almost in 2 straight games. Final 5 minutes here of this third period. Time is winding down. Power play for the Canucks. They don't score, but they managed to shut out the Rangers for the second straight game, and they have taken a 2-1 series lead. So Lafayette gets the only goal from Jyrki Lumme and Martin Gelina. 3 stars, Kirk McLean, Mike Richter, and Nathan Lafayette. Okay, so the Rangers are definitely due to score a goal. They have not scored in 2 straight games. The Canucks, I don't think, could keep shutting them out, but you never know. So let's see what happens here in Game 4. Will the Canucks take a decisive 3-1 series lead, or will the Rangers tie it up? First period, and it is scoreless yet again. So the offensive woes continue for the Rangers. They have not scored in 7 straight periods. They're probably due for one in this period. Second period, and there it is. They finally score, and it is Steve Larmer, the guy that knows how to put the puck in the net. Shots are 19-18 in favor of the Rangers, so it's still a tight game. Let's see if the Canucks could tie it here in the third, and they do. John McIntyre. Damn, these fourth liners are coming through more than the top line is for the Canucks. Halfway through this third period in a 1-1 game. Power play for the Rangers, and they don't score on it. Final 5 minutes of this third period. Are we going to be going to OT in this game? And yes, we are. So we are going to overtime in a critical Game 4 for the Rangers. If they lose this, the series might be all but over. Or it could end up being like what happened to the Canucks, and the Canucks would storm back to make it go to 7 games. But let's see what happens here in overtime in Vancouver. Will Pavel Bure come through with another OT career goal, or an OT goal like he did against the Calgary Flames back in '94? Almost done this first overtime period, and nobody has scored yet. Both goalies are playing really good, especially Mike Richter right now. He's giving his team a chance, and we are headed to double overtime. Who will be the hero here? Double overtime underway. And it's going to be the Canucks. Sergio MOMESSO has given the Canucks a 3-1 series lead. And I don't know how the Canucks are playing better almost than the Rangers, because in this, even though I did try to make them as close as possible, the Rangers were still a lot better. So Larmer from Messier and Mateau. Messier has been nowhere in the series. And then McIntyre from Lumme and Hunter. And then MOMESSO from Lumme and Gelina. So yeah, Kirk McLean has just been lights out in the series. He's only let in 1 goal in the last 3 games. So the Canucks have a chance to win the Stanley Cup in New York, but the New York Rangers need to start battling back, and they need to get their top line going if they want to win this Stanley Cup. So here we go, 5th game. New York Rangers need to win first period, and it is scoreless. Their offensive woes are continuing. Still 1 goal for in the last, like, I don't know how many periods now, like probably like, I'd say like 9 or 10 periods or more. Second period, and there you go, 1-0 Canucks. Pavel Bure has the goal. Is that the one that wins them the Stanley Cup, though? Power play for the Rangers here in the 3rd. They don't score. We're going to go down to 4-time simulation soon, and then we'll intervene if the Canucks have a chance to win the Stanley Cup. Power play for the Rangers, and they tie it, so we're not going to intervene just yet. Steve Larmer with the goal. Let's go down to 4-time simulation anyways, just in case there's a late goal from the Canucks or not. It's a 1-1 game. Big goal from Steve Larmer to give his team a chance. And there's a winner from Matteau. Potentially Matteau, you know. I would honestly put down that clip, the Matteau clip, but like I just don't know if I'll get copyright strikes and stuff for it. But the Rangers win on the goal from Matteau, and New York has stayed alive another day. So Bure from Ronning and COURTNALL, and then Larmer from Graves and Messier, and then Matteau from Tikkanen. Okay, so the Rangers managed to squeak one out there, and now it is going to Game 6. The Canucks looking to win the Stanley Cup on home ice, which would be pretty neat. But the Rangers looking to spoil that party and force a Game 7 back on their home ice. So here we go, game number 6, first period, and it's 1-0 Rangers. Not good. The top line's starting to get going for the Rangers. Adam Graves gets the goal. Shots are 11-7 in favor of New York. Second period, and it's 2-2. Wow, okay. So Pavel Bure tied the game up, but Craig McTavish would take the lead for the Rangers, and a goal from Martin Gelina will tie this game back up. Shots are 20-14 in favor of the Rangers. Let's see what happens here in the 3rd. And Adam Graves scores again. Not good that they're letting that top line get going for the Rangers. It's a 3-2 game for New York. Are they going to tie this series up headed back home? Like I said, I'm feeling the series could go 7 games, but Trevor Linden ties the game up. We're going to go down to 4 times in case, just because in case the Canucks somehow squeak out a win here. And power play late, and it is going to overtime. So since the Canucks have a chance to win the Stanley Cup and it's going to overtime, I'm going to let you guys watch overtime, and if for some reason the Canucks don't win, then we're going to just hop into the next game right away. So I'm going to let you guys watch, and hopefully the Canucks win the Stanley Cup. No offense to you Rangers fans, being the Canadian guy I am, I just need the Canucks to win. So I'll see you guys in a second.
Steps in from the neutral zone. He takes that point pass. Got it on his stick in the slot. Great point blank save. What a stop. Shoots one. Nearly grazed the iron on that. It in from the neutral zone. He works it along with a pass off the boards. Outstanding save. Just on reputation, you can smell a goal there. Messier. Enormous hit. He's crushed. Into the attacking end. A shot. That's terrific. Right in front. Oh, great save there. Pass to the slot. The big pillows came in handy. Snapping a pass to Bure. Gains the zone and looks over his options. Fires a shot. Wonderful stop. Terrific determination by Hedman. Just got his pad on that one. Shot, and still another save. What a show. They're skating it back in their own end. It's dumped in. My, what a hit.
Love the physical play. He takes his man right into the boards with a solid hit.
Center. Shoots one. Save there.
Put a soccer net there, he wouldn't have hit it.
Bure's hooked on this play, and the arm of the referee is hot. It's a great opportunity here. It's a long 5-on-3.
One of the biggest mistakes a 5-on-3 power play makes.
He hit the crossbar. One timer. Centering. Kicked away. 25 seconds remaining. Right to the point. What a ripper from the point. And a save. Pass cut by the offense. You cannot have been more than these players have, and yet they will be tested for at least one more shift before we have a final score.
We'll return after these words.
Cross from the point. New York's PK comes up large. Oh, a pad stop on the redirect.
It's going to be really difficult to unclog this game. Both teams have...
Side to side they go, trying to generate something. Save. Snaps one in there. Great save. Brilliant move on that pass. Wow, what a glove save. To pass in the corner. Laid on to McIntyre. Shot didn't have a lot on it, did it? Lane in the defensive zone. Shoots just wide.
Had plenty of room there and the door closed on him.
Third hit the post with the shot. Two teams that played hard, star players that gave their very best, and we still don't know how it'll turn out. In just a moment.
On the power play, it's one you have to capitalize on.
Didn't have time, but he saved it anyway. Good reach there. Oh, tremendous save. Denied a terrific chance. With a shot. Save. Gets across, looks over his options. Lets a shot go. Great save. Brings a shot. Big point blank save there.
That is a great display of goaltending there, Doc.
Gains the zone. Good place to shoot from. What a save, considering the shooter that's usually in. Yards gained to Lutkus. Terrific save there. Didn't look like he had anything to shoot at, and he made it tough.
Top of him, the building erupted.
Puts one on. Solid glove save. Smart recovery by Anderson. Just couldn't find the target. Gains the zone. Good place to shoot from, and he does. Wonderful stop. Great poke check. Lets it go. Save. Delayed call, and the goalie rests at the bench. Outstanding save. Takes that pass. Drives behind. Nicely patted away. Slid back across from one point to the other. Big pad save. The Canucks are skating it up at neutral ice. Nicely received at the point. Pass. Score! And that wins it, the Stanley Cup. A fitting tribute to a wonderful season. Training camp in September was a dream. For this team, it is a nightmare. They got so far. We'll have the same short summer, but nothing to show for it.
You go through the handshake lineup and there is sportsmanship to be shown, but it's hard to let go of the intensity of a long and bitter series.
The playoff MVP gets the Conn Smythe Trophy, and here is the winner.
I'm always interested in the way the player reacts to getting this trophy. It's almost like they want to get out of there so they can celebrate the Stanley Cup. You've been selected as the best player in the playoffs, but really all you can think about is that your team is champions.
It's often said it's the hardest prize to win because it takes 8 weeks. And by tradition, the captain is the first to hold it high.
No matter where you look in the hockey world over the next little while, that picture will be the first one that you see. It will also be in his home in a prominent position, I imagine, a moment he'll never forget. As long as the Stanley Cup has been presented on the ice, and then the players have made a victory lap with it, there's been a pecking order as to how the cup is handed off. Nobody really talks about it. It just organically happens. But everybody knows there's a seniority to the way that this 30-pound trophy is presented player to player.
In what would be his last Stanley Cup victory, Wayne Gretzky gathered everyone at center ice for a team picture, and that has now become a custom.
So there you guys have it. The New York Rangers lost the Stanley Cup Finals in 1994. The Vancouver Canucks winning on a goal from Trevor Linden, which was his second goal of the night. This was actually a really nice goal. I'm probably going to do the overtime where you guys watched in like a condensed highlight format just because it's going to take too long, because this was the third overtime period, almost the fourth. So CRAVEN walking in with the puck. A nice little pass over here to Dave Babbage, who is that offensive defenseman I was mentioning before. Throwing that nice pass across, and the captain, Trevor Linden, there with the tap-in to win the Stanley Cup for the Vancouver Canucks. If only that one happened in real life, that would have been a lot better, but there you go, on the 48th shot on goal as well. So yeah, that overtime was pretty intense. There was some really crazy moments. You guys probably would have seen it because I'm like putting it in condensed highlights. So okay, so the final thing we got to do is take a look at the player stats for the playoffs. Obviously, Kirk McLean took home the Conn Smythe because he had just a very good playoff run. Like, I think he had like a 961 save percentage. So as for player stats, so Trevor Linden had point per game, 6 points in 6 games, including 3 in that final game. Ronnie had 5 points, Adams 4 points, Messier had the most for the Rangers with 4 assists. Pavel Bure 3 goals, which led the league actually. And all that sort of stuff. And then in terms of goaltenders, Kirk McLean 4-2 with 2 shutouts, a 955 save percentage, and a 1.22 goals against average. While Mike Richter, he was actually pretty good as well, 2-2 with a 937 save percentage and a 1.84 goals against average. And then Glenn Healy technically got considered a loss, even though he also played the same game Mike Richter did. He was actually pretty good in the game that he played. Okay, so that is going to do it, guys, for this 1994 Stanley Cup Finals Rematch episode. Hopefully you guys really like this video. Like I said, I'm going to be probably doing the 2003 Stanley Cup Finals for the next episode, and then after that in 1997. That would probably wrap up the Stanley Cup Finals rematches, and then there will probably be more going into NHL 20 and whatnot, just because I have to... I don't know how my summer is going to be in terms of uploading yet, but I'll let you guys know about that once I get closer to the summer and whatnot. So anyways, let me know what you guys think about this down below, and I'll see you guys next time.